Welcome back. Today is International Women's Day, and here in Western New York, we have had our share of women make their mark on history.
Yeah, without a doubt, many of whom I've profiled in Unknown Stories over the years. And this morning, we are celebrating 3 Western New York women who took on the status quo and paved a new path for future generations. When you think of Buffalo's architectural gems, especially those polished in recent years, the Hotel Lafayette certainly comes to mind. But while this historic building turned modern attraction definitely represents the resurgence of the Queen City, it also represents a first for women and an incredible feat. Louise Bethune was the mind behind the design. Bethune is widely regarded as the first woman in the country to practice as a professional architect. But she certainly wasn't the only woman who made her mark in Western New York.
I think she kind of fell into both. She was both a rabble-rouser, but she was also a politician. She was a good politician.
Belva Lockwood was born Belva Ann Bennett in 1830 on a farm in Royalton. She was married as a teenager and a widowed mother by the age of 22. To support herself and her daughter, Lockwood worked as a teacher and didn't stop there. She had bigger dreams and wasn't going to let conventional thinking stand in her way. Denied entry into several law schools because she was a woman, Lockwood studied law privately until the National University Law School opened its doors to women. That is the spirit that drove her to become the first woman to ever argue before the Supreme Court, and 5 years later, in 1884, the first woman to ever run for president.
Got votes in many of the states and really was quite a phenomenal person. I wish I had known her.
Which is amazing, especially when you consider this Western New Yorker ran on the Equal Rights Party line in both 1884 and 1888 against fellow Western New Yorker Grover Cleveland. That was more than 30 years before the ratification of the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. But a fire that burned inside of her drove her to become a true pioneer for women's rights. A fire that was shared by another woman with ties to Western New York more than a century later. In 1969, Shirley Chisholm became the first black woman elected to the U.S. Congress. She was reelected 6 times until she retired in 1983. In Congress, she spoke out for civil rights and women's rights, advocated for the poor, and opposed the Vietnam War.
I think she was cut maybe of the same cloth as Belva Lockwood.
By the way, she ran for the Democratic nomination for president in 1972. Her connection to Buffalo would come years later when she married Assemblyman Arthur Hardwick Jr. of Williamsville, eventually moving here and sharing more than just a dream with Lockwood.
Loving all of those stories and taking a look back at ones that you've done before, but on our website, we've got all of them posted.
Yeah, just a few of the women that have made a huge mark here in Western New York.
Yeah, all right.